The last time you were near an animal, a dog, a horse, a cat, did you ever notice how it seemed to know something about you before you said a word? Maybe you were stressed and the dog started nudging your hand. Maybe you were nervous around a large horse and it flicked its ears back and stepped away from you. Maybe you walked past a stray cat that took one look at you and vanished before you could get closer. You probably chalked it up to coincidence. It wasn't. For at least 300,000 years, your ancestors lived surrounded by animals that could read them in ways modern humans have almost completely forgotten about. And most of those animals still can. You just don't notice anymore because you're the one who stopped paying attention.
The question of whether animals can sense human fear used to sound like folklore. Old hunters swore that a nervous man couldn't stalk deer. Ranchers insisted that a scared rider would never calm a spooked horse. Grandparents told children not to run from strange dogs because they can smell it on you. For most of the 20th century, scientists dismissed all of this as superstition. Then, starting in the early 2000s, researchers began to actually test it, and almost every study came back with the same answer. The old hunters were right. The clearest evidence came from dogs, which makes sense. Humans have lived alongside dogs for at least 15,000 years, and possibly much longer. In 2018, a team at the University of Naples ran an elegant experiment. They collected sweat samples from human volunteers under 3 conditions. One group watched a calm, pleasant nature video. Another group watched a horror film. A third group watched something neutral. The researchers then presented each sweat sample to dogs and measured what happened. The dogs exposed to the fear sweat showed a completely different response from the ones exposed to the calm or neutral samples. Their heart rates went up. Their stress hormones spiked. They sought reassurance from their owners. They avoided strangers in the room they had previously ignored. The dogs had never seen the humans who produced the sweat. They didn't know the horror film existed. They simply smelled fear, and something inside them changed.
And it wasn't just dogs.
In 2023, researchers at Umeå University in Sweden discovered that trained dogs could identify human stress through breath and sweat samples with about 94% accuracy. That's higher than most medical diagnostic tests we use on humans. But the deepest research on this comes from horses. Horses have been living beside humans for around 6,000 years. And any experienced rider will tell you that a horse mirrors its rider's emotional state almost instantly. Modern science now knows why. Studies at the University of Sussex have documented that horses can distinguish between happy and angry human facial expressions, and that they remember specific human faces for months. Even more strangely, when a horse is standing beside a fearful person, its heart rate begins to synchronize with theirs. Not gradually, not vaguely. Within minutes, the horse's cardiac rhythm shifts to mirror the human it is standing next to. A large prey animal weighing over 1,000 pounds is quietly listening to your heart from 3 feet away and adjusting its own body to match. And you almost never notice it happening.
To understand why so many animals do this, we have to go back to something almost every mammal shares. Your body produces different chemical signals depending on what emotion you're experiencing. When you're calm, your sweat glands release one profile of compounds. When you're afraid, an entirely different set of chemicals gets released, mostly from what are called apocrine sweat glands, which are concentrated in your armpits, groin, and scalp. Fear sweat is chemically distinct from ordinary sweat. It contains a specific mix of hormones and volatile compounds, some of which humans can barely smell, but which almost any mammal with a working nose can detect from meters away. A dog can smell in parts per trillion. A bear can smell in parts per quadrillion, meaning it can detect a single drop of scent across acres of forest. To an animal like that, a frightened human isn't just visible, it's chemically loud. Now consider what that meant for your ancestors. For most of human history, we were not the top of the food chain. We were medium-sized primates walking across savannas, forests, and river valleys shared with lions, hyenas, wolves, leopards, and bears.
Every one of those animals could smell what our ancestors were feeling before they were even visible. And this created a strange evolutionary pressure. Humans who could stay calm in dangerous situations were less likely to be attacked. Humans who panicked broadcast their fear across an entire ecosystem. Anthropologists studying modern indigenous hunter-gatherer groups have found that experienced hunters often describe entering a specific mental state before approaching prey. The Hadza of Tanzania call it hunting quiet. The San of the Kalahari describe a similar internal stillness. These aren't just cultural rituals, they're behavioral adaptations to a very real biological fact. The animals you were trying to reach could smell whatever you felt. If you were nervous, they knew. If you were confident but calm, they let you get closer. For 300,000 years, our species survived because it slowly learned how to manage the invisible chemical language that its own body was constantly leaking into the air. And then, somewhere in the last few thousand years, we stopped needing to. We built villages, then cities, then apartment buildings, then indoor climate-controlled rooms with sealed windows and filtered air. We stopped being hunted by predators. We stopped hunting animals ourselves. Most of us today can go weeks without being within scent range of any large mammal we didn't choose to be near. Our fear chemistry didn't go away. It just stopped being read by anyone who mattered. But there is still one place where the ancient system remains fully alive. Between us and the animals we chose to keep. The dogs, the horses, the cats, the birds. The species that entered our lives thousands of years ago and never quite left. Every one of them is still equipped with the same nose and the same nervous system that read our ancestors like a book. And every one of them is still reading you. When your dog seems to know you're upset before you say anything, she does know. She smelled the cortisol rise in your sweat, saw the shift in your posture, heard the change in your breath, and recognized a pattern she has been decoding since before you were born. When your cat suddenly hides on a day you've been anxious, she isn't confused. She's responding exactly the way her ancestors responded to a nervous predator in the wild. When a horse won't let you approach it, you're not bad with horses, you're broadcasting. There's an even stranger part of this that only recent research has begun to hint at. Animals may not just detect our fear, they may sometimes catch it. Studies of dogs living with anxious owners have shown elevated stress hormone levels in the dogs themselves, levels that match the emotional patterns of the humans they live with. Horses ridden by anxious people have measurably higher heart rates than the same horses ridden by calm ones. Even parrots and rabbits have been documented mirroring the mood of the humans they spend time with. The animals in your life are running an emotional feedback loop with you that you're barely aware of. You are influencing them constantly, and they are influencing you back. So what do you do with any of this? Nothing dramatic. Just remember what almost every human before you knew instinctively. The animals around you are not passive observers. They are ancient, sensitive, chemically literate beings that evolved alongside your species for hundreds of thousands of years. They can read you. They have always been able to read you. And when you walk past a stray dog, or step near a horse, or sit down beside a cat curled on a windowsill, an old conversation is still happening between your body and theirs, one your ancestors would have recognized immediately. You just forgot how to listen to your side of it. The animals never did.